When Tara Pringle Jefferson was 26, she was a freelance consultant and writer. She says she often worked 18-hour days, and after some time, she started feeling pain in her neck and shoulder. When she went to the doctor prescribed a treatment that she didn't expect: rest. Tara writes the following, quote, "I was only 26, but I was already working myself to death," end quote. A lot changed after that appointment. Tara started thinking about how hard she worked and about how hard the other Black women she knew worked. Eventually, Tara shifted careers, and today she's a wellness advocate who wants to break down the barriers to self-care that Black women face. From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. This hour, we're talking with Tara Pringle Jefferson about wellness. Tara is the author of Bloom How You Must, a Black woman's guide to self-care and generational healing. She's also founder of the Self-Care Suite. It's a wellness community for Black women. Tara, welcome to Disrupted.
I'm so happy to be here and grateful that I have the opportunity to chat with you about my book. I'm really thrilled.
I am thrilled to talk with you. I think it's so important and timely. And before we talk about the work, I'm curious about the journey. Your focus is on Black women, Black women's healing, Black women's connection. Talk to our listeners about what drew you to that particular focus.
I think my focus has always been very grounded in the lives of my family. I started the Self-Care Suite, the book, all the events, everything that I do really goes back to my mother and my grandmother, two of the hardest working women that I know and could possibly just conceive of in my mind. And looking at their lives and looking at how hard they've worked, how much they've poured into their families, into their communities, I feel considered to be like my life's work to draw attention to the ways that all of that wonderful, nurturing, caretaking that Black women are known to do. It's kind of my life's work at this moment to help us turn some of that attention to ourselves because we know how to do it. We know how to take care of everybody that needs to be taken care of, whether they're related to us or not. And I really felt called to do this work, looking at how much, my grandmother has sacrificed over her 87 years, how much my mother has sacrificed over her 64 years. And it's my hope that as this work continues, that more and more Black women, they begin to rewrite some of these stories that they've inherited, and they are able to create a new blueprint for a younger generation.
You are very clear and direct in this book to say that wellness isn't just about being happy. It's not just a singular feeling or singular emotion or moment. It is a much broader process that people can live within. Tell us what wellness means to you and why you thought it was important to make that distinction between just being happy and having a more holistic experience.
I really had to make it clear in the book that when we're talking about wellness, when we're talking about self-care and rest and healing and all of these things, I think a huge misconception, as you've pointed out, is that people think you're going to be happy 100% of the time. And that's unrealistic. If you just look at any headline in the world, there's a lot of things going on that can cause stress and upheaval in all of our lives. It's happening every single day. And so for me, the core point of focusing on wellness and encouraging women to invest into their own wellness habits and rituals isn't so that we're happy 7 days a week. It's so when those hard times come, that we know we have a grounded sense within ourselves that we will be okay. It may not look okay right now, or we may be stressed right now, but we have this sense that things will be okay if we can tap into our tools, we can tap into our community, if we can tap into our networks. We have this sense that things will be okay, and we're able to tell our body, right? Our
Mm.
minds and our bodies that will be okay. So I really love that you called that out, because that is something that I really want people to be able to take away from the book in
Mm.
general, is that wellness is something that is accessible to all of us because it doesn't promise that days will be perfect. It just promises that we will be able to withstand the waves
Mm.
as they come.
That notion of being able to give ourselves grace and to
Mhm.
hold space for, yes, there is disappointment. Yes, there may be hurt or sadness, but that holding space for grace also means then that women stop questioning themselves
Mm.
of, well, why don't I just feel happy about everything? Or I have these things, or I went and did this thing. Society gives people that message that the things are supposed to lead to that wellness. There may be people listening to our conversation, Tara, and I'll just say for our listeners, everything that Tara is saying, I find myself nodding along like, yes, yes, yes. But there may be people listening to our conversation and saying, well, I'm not a Black woman, but I experienced that too. Or, I'm not a woman of color, but I experience a sort of societal weight to hold it all together or to take care of other people. How do you respond to that in terms of your work being grounded in this historical understanding, a societal understanding, and the need to say those experiences, some pieces may be common, but there is a particular experience for Black women that we need to name? How do you respond to that question?
Well, I wrote the book, Bloom How You Must, for an audience of specifically for Black women. However, as I've been on this book tour and I've been talking to people, there have been people of all backgrounds who've read the book and they've reported back to me that they've learned so much about Black women's journey in this country. I start each chapter with a historical perspective as we talk about different aspects of wellness. So, as we're talking about professional wellness, for example, in that chapter, I talk about that historical perspective of Black women trying to exert some type of agency over their professional lives and how that has been a really difficult challenge. And so, as people come to me and they're reading this book, they're getting a good sense of what it means to be well professionally, what it means to be well physically and mentally, and all of these different aspects. And so when people say, I'm not Black, but I still feel some of these same pressures, great. You can join in this conversation and you can also understand what it may be like to walk in somebody's shoes that don't look like you, but you're also bringing your own lived experiences to the table, which is what I recommend that everybody do.
One of the things that I find so important and necessary about your approach in this book is that emphasis on cross generational, multi generational understanding and connecting. I consider it a tremendous blessing in my life that I am in spaces where I am with women who are older than I am. I'm on a college campus every day, so I'm learning from young women, the young women in my family, girls within my community. So I am fortunate to be in those spaces to think about what are the things that I took for granted about what my mother and my grandmothers had to endure and navigate. What are the things that I want to ensure that my daughter never accepts just because my generation didn't think we had an option, and how we learn with and from each other? For you to name in this book that need for cross generational understanding that doesn't do the thing, Tara, that I often see of
Mhm.
younger women saying, well, I don't want to be like that. Right? Like,
Mhm.
why did they do that? This is really about understanding and the connection. Talk to us about that approach for you, because you have this wisdom that exceeds your years, but is
Mhm.
also grounded in a respect. Talk to us about that cross generational approach.
When I first developed kind of thesis for Bloom How You Must, that cross-generational approach was always there. And I really wanted to ground it in this appreciation for what our foremothers, what they went through, what our ancestors went through, what their lives were like. And it was never an intention of mine to try to look down on them and cast some type of blame for how their lives were and how it turned out. I know, within every ounce of my being that my great great grandmother was doing the best that she could, that she was trying to operate in a world that was really rigged against her survival. And when you look into the history of it, you see that the game was rigged, right? Like it really wasn't an opportunity for these earlier generations to focus on healing and wellness. They were trying to survive. It was really life in survival mode. And so I did want to honor their sacrifices, and I wanted to honor what they gave us in terms of strength, in terms of resilience, in terms of being able to make a way out of no way. I wanted to honor that and then add on to that. It's not about pointing fingers. It's not about any of that. It's really about adding to what we've been given so that we can create even more fuller, beautiful legacies for those young women who are coming behind us.
I also love that you make clear in this book that this is not a static kind of
Mm.
approach, that women can create new at any stage in their
Mm.
lives. They can decide that they want and deserve better and pursue better for themselves, and that they don't have to think that because they've reached a particular age marker or some kind of status, that there is no opportunity for them. That sort of approach to hope, to possibility, the stories that you tell, I think re-energize people to consider that. You've talked a lot about history and how you wanted to be sure that this was an historically grounded approach in your book. Is there a particular historical moment, either in sort of broad social history or in your own experience, that makes you tap in to say, this was a pivotal moment or occurrence that shaped your view on healing?
I talked earlier about a little bit about the chapter on professional wellness. That chapter really started with a newspaper clipping that I believe early 1900s in, I want to say North Carolina or South Carolina, one of those states. And it talked about Negro women being forced to work. And NAACP had to issue a rebuke of all of these laws that were popping up all over the South, forcing Black women who were at that time leaving the cotton fields because they were receiving benefits because their husbands were at war. And for the first time in their life, they had a bit of agency, a choice of whether they had to work or not. And of course, the powers that be did not like that. And when I was doing the research and I was thinking about this, about how there were all these ordinances drafted saying that they had to maintain some type of employment, they had to go back to the fields, they had to pick the cotton, there was a lot of uproar about the fact that these Black women were choosing themselves. They were choosing to spend their time how they pleased. And that is such a radical concept. I wanted us to remember that there are moments in our history, it may not seem like it. Powers that be are trying to erase a lot of our history, but there are moments in the past where we have been able to decide for ourselves what our day looked like. There aren't a ton of moments, we can't really point to decades and decades and decades of that type of agency. But, just thinking about, early 1900s, thinking about the women who were able to choose because their husbands were fighting off in the war, they were able to choose to stay home and take care of their children and tend to their homes and tend to themselves in ways that they hadn't been able to before. It's really important that we know this. It's really important that we are reminded that when there is an opportunity for us to exert our agency, that we've taken it. And that's why it's important to know our history and to know what we've been through, because it is a blueprint that we've been following, whether knowingly or unknowingly. And so I definitely want people to, as they're reading the book, these discussions on wellness are grounded in real people's lives, real people's experiences. As we think back to, our grandmothers and our great grandmothers, their stories still influence how we see the world today.
Coming up, more with Tara Pringle Jefferson, author of Bloom How You Must, A Black Woman's Guide to Self-Care and Generational Healing. She'll discuss how a fear of being labeled selfish keeps some women from self-care.
Being human means that we have certain needs that must be met, that we have certain ways of being that we need to tend to in order for us to feel our most authentic and whole self.
This is Disrupted. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. This hour, we're talking about wellness and the barriers to self-care that Black women face. We're still joined by Tara Pringle Jefferson, a wellness advocate and author of Bloom How You Must, A Black Woman's Guide to Self-Care and Generational Healing. Although we use the term self-care, taking care of yourself also affects the people around you. I asked Tara to talk about the relationship between self-care and community care. A note for our listeners, this portion of our conversation contains a discussion of intimate partner violence.
One of the things that we started with, my editor and I, when we started working on this book, I think a lot of people have seen an image of Rosa Parks on her mat, her yoga mat, doing some headstands and all of these really flexible movements. And as I was, doing more research, I kept coming across all of these images, Rosa Parks and Toni Morrison, Audre Lorde, all of these women just really pouring into themselves as they were creating movements and moments in Black history, as they were pouring into their communities, as they were writing, beautiful novels that depict the Black experience beautifully, as they were, marching with other civil rights leaders. It really became clear to me through the imagery that self-care had to be part of community care. It had to be part of how we show up for ourselves is reflected in how we show up for other people. And again, that blueprint is there. I'm really calling our attention back to the fact that over the past, I'd say maybe 30 years or so, our society has become increasingly individualistic, where we are looking at, how does this work for me? And how do I make it in this world? Because again, the pressures and the powers that be, it really is kind of putting us into these silos where we're not depending on each other in ways that we used to previously. So as we're thinking about all of that, it's really important for us to remember that we should be strong, one, for ourselves, and be grounded in that for ourselves, that our wellness, again, helps us as difficult times come. But that sense of self-care also enables us to be a stronger member of our community. It allows us to be pouring from a full cup versus giving people the few drops that are left. And so I definitely want readers to take away from the book that self-care and community care go hand in hand.
People are often surprised, Tara, when I tell them that at my core, I'm an introvert, because I kind of work in professions that have the opposite perception of that. And even being someone who is somewhat introverted, I have purposely aligned in spaces with other people who can pour into me and that I can pour into, that we can vision together, we can strategize together, we can just be together. And one of the real benefits for that in my life is that it's this reminder of how, for people in general, but I think particularly for Black women who are navigating the pressure of being one of few or being the only, of being too much for some people and not enough for others, it is this reminder when we are in those community care spaces and being community held and community loved, it's a reminder of the ways that stress, that trauma, that anxiety can live within your body. and can manifest in all of these health challenges that Black women are often disproportionately experiencing or predisposed to because of some of the powers and forces that you have talked about, right? The nature of capitalism in this country, the nature of individualism, the pressure of being asked to support everyone and being called selfish when you show up for yourself. Given the work that you do in terms of wellness and breath work and so many other things, how do you see that alignment between mind, body, spirit when you talk about blooming how one must?
One of the things that you mentioned that I just wanted to that comes up a lot in my work is that sense of how often we are labeled selfish as we tend to ourselves, and often in a lot of cases for the first time. That fear of being labeled selfish has kept a lot of women stuck in patterns that don't serve them, in relationships that drain them. And I really do believe that as we're trying to bloom, as I put forth in my book, that we have to be 100% wedded and grounded in this idea of our humanity, understanding that being human means that we have certain needs that must be met, that we have certain ways of being that we need to tend to. In order for us to feel our most authentic and whole self. So, we need to be able to have that space to tend to our bodies. When stressful times come, we need to have those rituals that allow the stress to move throughout our body and out of our body so that the stress doesn't remain and isn't just ping-ponging inside, kind of like one of those arcade machines, for days and weeks and months on end. We need to have the space to be able to clear our minds and let the chatter in our minds settle. We need to have that opportunity to gather with people who fill us up. We need all of these things as humans. And for so long, Black women haven't been seen as fully human. We've been seen as something otherworldly, something else, something that doesn't have the same needs as other people. And so when we lean into that humanity of what we need, what all humans need, then I think that the quest to bloom, the quest to be our full selves, it becomes that much easier because the things that we are asking for are not unreasonable. This is something that every single person should have a right to.
I'm going to be incredibly vulnerable for a moment, Tara. This feels almost like a therapeutic session for me. So thank you. I'll send my copay after we have this convo. As I was preparing to come to the studio this morning, my heart was heavy. And I expressed this to my production team before we started having our conversation. As a Black woman, being bombarded by the stories of Black women being harmed by intimate partners, losing their lives to people who are supposed to protect them and affirm them, and hearing, seeing, reading the ways in which those women who were victimized are being treated as defendants who have to justify why they were not somehow responsible or complicit in the harm that ended up taking their lives. At the time that you and I are having this conversation, it is the day after Dr. Serena Onder Fairfax in Virginia lost her life at the hands of her husband. And the swirl of conversation of people who are rushing to make excuses for the people who perpetrated the harm and in some ways questioning the Black women who are no longer with us. And it has made my heart really heavy. I wonder in the work that you do and this notion of self-care and generational healing, how do you see vulnerability showing up for Black women? On the one hand, saying to Black women, yes, you deserve to be vulnerable and to not feel like you have to have it all together. And on the other, understanding that for many Black women, to be vulnerable can be dangerous. How do we reconcile those two things?
Mhm. You make And I just have to kind of pause for a moment because the news, as you mentioned, is very heavy. I Before we got on this call today, I was reading some updates and things that were happening about the Fairfax incident in particular. And the coverage thus far has been highly disappointing to me. It makes my work feel all the more, unfortunately, all the more important because Black women just aren't given the space, again, to be human, right? Even in our death, as victims of violence, we are still not given, the proper respect, the proper even naming. I've seen so many posts from other people referring to the lieutenant governor and hardly any mentioning the actual, the victim. And so when we talk about vulnerability, I definitely do encourage women to be vulnerable and to share their truth and to say when things aren't feeling right, when they need a moment. I always will be a person who wants you to speak the truth of how you feel. And at the same time, I understand that there are some situations where you may not feel comfortable. You may not feel like you have the space to do that. And it's my hope that as time continues, that fewer and fewer Black women will feel that way, that our vulnerability will be treasured, it'll be taken seriously, it will be something that we are more fluent in. Because right now, our fluency is in silence, it's in quiet, it's in carrying the hard things and keeping it close to our chest. And it's my hope, through the work that I do, through the work that a lot of women that I truly respect and admire, a lot of this work that's happening is to try to make it a safer society for Black women. When we're talking about self care and rest and healing, a lot of that work is on the individual level, but it is our hope that as a collective, it starts to bubble up and it becomes something that affects policy, something that is embedded in our communities, in our neighborhoods. I'll give you one quick example of how my book was given to a program officer at a foundation that was thinking about they're forming, some committee to create a Black women's sabbatical fund and thinking about ways that Black women can be supported, not just on a one-on-one basis, but through these institutions. Being able to support us is key as we talk about, these really disheartening, depressing news stories of Black women being harmed. I just want to say, just from my perspective, where I sit as an author, as a wellness person, that it is my hope that society becomes safer for Black women, and just as a whole, full stop. Like that's the period, that's the full sentence.
If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, there's help. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. You can also text the word START to 88788. Coming up, more with Tara Pringle Jefferson, author of Bloom How You Must, a Black woman's guide to self-care and generational healing. She'll talk about her approach to healing.
That healing journey, it looks like tending to myself at every age, at every stage, with the same grace and the same love that I give my children.
This is Disrupted. Stay with us. Welcome back to Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. This hour, we're talking about wellness and the barriers to self-care that Black women face. We're still joined by Tara Pringle Jefferson, a wellness advocate and author of Bloom How You Must, a Black woman's guide to self-care and generational healing. Because the book is a guide to self-care, I asked Tara about some practical tips for moving towards healing.
I always like to remind people that sometimes the simplest answers are the best. And so in the book, I talk about having a AM and PM system, something where in the morning before you give yourself to your job, before the kids, before whatever comes your way that day, you take a moment to ground yourself in whatever way feels good and natural and accessible to you. Whether that's taking the time to make yourself a really nice cup of coffee, taking time to take a really like aromatherapy centered shower to really get yourself kind of kickstart your day, whether it's a delicious breakfast, whether it's some type of physical movement, something in the AM to get you ready for the day ahead, and then something in the evening to help you release and process everything that you've been through in that day. So I even say, in the book, part of my PM process is when I take that shower at the end of the day, I am literally, scrubbing up, but I'm literally envisioning all of the things that happened that day going down the drain. So, oh, that meeting didn't go so well. Scrub, scrub, scrub. It's going down the drain. I didn't really like the interaction that I had with my husband earlier today. It's going down the drain. I'm stressed. I got this little yappy dog who is resistant to dog training. It's going down the drain. And I talked to in the book, I talked to 100 Black women, and one of those women was in her late 70s, I believe. And she had the AM, PM practice that she had been doing since the 80s, which I absolutely loved. And, she said that she took 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. And she said that was her small step of courage to reclaiming time for herself in the midst of being a working mother, in the midst of being a single mother. She had that 40 minutes a day, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, where she could be balanced and ground herself and be able to tend to herself from a place of fullness and not a place of lack.
I'm nodding along as you're talking about this because I definitely have an AM and a PM routine that I am fiercely protective of
Mm,
because I feel like it's the investment in me. Anyone who knows me knows how much I hate Monday morning emails because it's
yes.
like people save up all their angst over the weekend and then it's just a barrage. So I start every morning with my meditation time, with my word game time before I interact with anyone. Because I feel like I need to put that armor on to say, make this commitment to yourself to control the things that you can, but to prioritize the things you can. And part of my PM routine, I actually learned this from my grandfather. I
Mm,
sit in my car before I go into my home at the end of a
mhm.
workday because whatever has gone on during the workday, I want to leave it there as much as I can. And I want to be sure that the energy I'm bringing into my home, the energy I'm bringing with my family, is not fragile, but is focused and to protect it in that way. So I love that this elder has had a routine for so long because it's making me think about what are the routines I need to continue to nurture. The other thing is that I listened to you talk about your work, Tara. You are trained as a journalist. You are now a self care coach. You are a writer. You are a healer at your
Mm.
core. What does the healing journey feel like for you?
I love that question. I spend a lot of time talking with my past selves, a lot of time communing with them, a lot of time comforting them. I had my daughter when I was in college, and that was a very difficult time for me because I was fully convinced that the plans that I had for my life were going to go off the rails, and I wasn't going to be able to achieve all the things that I wanted to because now priorities had to shift and my ideas about how I was going to be spending my time had to shift. And so I spent a lot of time going back to that period in particular of my life because I really want to let her know that everything's okay. Everything is okay. And in the same way that I do that, I do feel I'm 40 now, so I do feel that, my 50, 60-year-old self, they're talking to me as well. And they're telling me in this moment, everything's gonna be all right. You'll see. Like just keep doing what you know how to do. Everything will be okay. And so for me, that healing journey, it looks like tending to myself at every age, at every stage, with the same grace and the same love that I give my children. And I don't know another way to honor my becoming and to honor my unfolding than to nurture every single version of me. No judgment, no pressure, none of that. It's pure love. It's 100% love. And I do feel as I'm doing this work throughout my events and my community and through this book tour, I feel it getting stronger. I feel that connection between all of these past selves getting stronger. And I also encourage other people to have those conversations with their younger selves and just love on them, right? Love on those versions of you that need a little extra love.
I have this running joke with my sisters when things are heavy or overwhelming, and I'll say to them, all the Black women in me are tired right now.
Mm,
And they
mm,
instantly know what
mhm,
that means. But it is that idea of being aligned and in tuned with our past selves,
mhm.
being aligned with the elders who have spoken life into our paths and made things possible. But it's also about speaking to our future selves, the people we are becoming, that we want to become, and that we want to love on, so that we arrive in those stages of our lives with a fullness, a wholeness, and a wellness that is also an affirmation. There are so many challenges that Black women face in their lives, but there are also many beautiful moments and opportunities and experiences that women are blooming into. When you think about that, Tara, and you think about the work that you're doing, what gives you hope for the future of Black women to bloom?
The thing that gives me a lot of hope is two sides of the same coin, actually. It's when I am able to talk to the younger generation. I love a good Gen Z. I don't really talk to Gen Alpha too much, but Gen Z, I love chatting with them because their ideas of fairness, of equality, of wellness, they are light years ahead of where I was at that age. And so when I talk to them, when I'm speaking at colleges or just they're there at different gatherings, it makes me feel like the future is in really good hands. It really makes me believe that some of these lessons are sinking in and they are really able to say, I do want to have a life that feels good, that I want to be connected. I want to be in community with people. I feel really great about that. And on the other side of that coin, when I talk to my elders, when I talk to those women in the course of writing this book, I talked to a number of Black women who are in their 80s and up. And when I talked to them and I asked them about the younger generation, they were full of pride as well. They were full of joy at the idea of these young girls, as they call them, blooming and getting everything that they want out of life. I really do feel that these conversations that I had with Black women, the young and then the older, but even all the ones in between. I mean, if you sit down as a person who interviews for a living, sitting down with these women, that in and of itself gave me an incredible amount of hope because I know that we love each other, we care for one another, we are rooting for one another, and it really connects me to just love, right? Like I think at the heart of self-care and rest and wellness is love. And that gives me a lot of hope for the future. This idea that we have each other. We have each other. We have everything that we need in each other. And I definitely believe that's where most of my hope comes from.
Well, here's to more love and to more hope and to more possibility. Tara Pringle Jefferson is author of Bloom How You Must, a Black woman's guide to self-care and generational healing. She's founder of the Self-Care Suite. It's a wellness community for Black women. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you so much.
Disrupted is produced by Kevin Chang Barnum, Robin Doyon Aiken, Erica McIntosh, and Meg Fitzgerald. You can listen to more than 250 episodes of Disrupted in our archive. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Disrupted and Connecticut Public. And if you love an episode, please remember to leave us a comment. You can listen for new episodes every Friday at 9 a.m. From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown Dean. Thanks for listening.